You truly become magnetic when you cultivate presence in this reality that, or this realization that we are far greater than this human form.
Positive self-talk. Why is it so important?
Our body is listening, right? And we're saying so many negative things quietly in our mind that we need to sometimes counteract them with positive ones that we say loudly.
What would you say is the common denominator for living in abundance?
Is not necessarily to go get something more. We have it already. It's all around us. It's to release what's blocking us from it. And usually that block is fear.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, a podcast about growth and mindset. I'm Moshe Popack, and today we chat with Jim Curtis. For the past 27 years, Jim's mission has been to change the health and wellness of the world. First as an executive at WebMD, Everyday Health, and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and now as a coach, spiritual guide, and therapist. He's got great advice to get past pain, setbacks, and trauma, and to become more magnetic and optimistic. Before we start the show, just a quick ask. If you enjoy Common Denominator, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps promote the show, and it helps us get great guests. Thank you so much, and here's my conversation with Jim. Hi, Jim, and welcome to Common Denominator.
I'm so happy to be here. You were just telling me what common denominator meant, and what I wanted to say is this idea of our commonality feeds in very well to what I talk about in the idea of human oneness. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. The concept of magnetism, I think that's a brilliant nuance. And first of all, what does that mean in general? What does it mean to you?
Well, there's two things, right? So most people perceptionally are living kind of in this reality that thinks that like the things that I do and you do create this reality, right? So when I come to people like that and I say how to become more magnetic, and you start to give pointers on how to become more magnetic, people start to think, okay, how do I attract more people into my life by doing things, some social psychology or an action that I can take? But it's almost like giving vegetables mixed into a cake or some other thing, some tricky way to get someone to eat vegetables, because you truly become magnetic when you cultivate presence in this reality or this realization that we are far greater than this human form. We have this spiritual life, this spiritual presence, this energy that's all around us that we can't see. And we start to rise above this everyday crazy monkey mind thoughts. We just simply become more present. And then everybody's attracted in some way because they find you as having something they don't.
I'll tell you, I find a lot of people talking about being present from a practical perspective, because there's so much noise. It could be on social media, it could be from family, from friends. How much energy we spend on the past. The past, you can't change it no matter what you do. And then the fear of the future. But what are practical tips? Because this, I think, is a great takeaway for the audience. What are practical tips for helping someone whose mind is racing all over the place and wants to be more present? What are practical tips for that?
Okay, here's some really practical tips. And one is, right, there's fear of the future, which creates anxiety, and there's rumination about the past, which creates, sadness, right, and depression. So what are some practical tips to get into the present, right? I was just at dinner with someone the other night, and we're sitting and we're talking, and there's a few of us, and they're getting phone call. Their phone is on the dinner table, and they're answering text messages, looking at Instagram, and phones ringing and that kind of thing, right? So here's a really simple one. When you have 1,000 dings, like messages, buzzes coming your way, then even in your subconscious mind, if your phone's on the table, you're thinking about it, right? So first, here it is: shut off every notification on your phone. On my phone, I've shut off every notification. I don't know how many text messages come in. I don't have all the numbers that are in red on your iPhone. And shut off all the notifications, the sounds, the buzzes, the dings, the numbers. They are there to keep your dopamine spiked, and you cannot be present. Second is when you're with people, start to get curious about two things. One is your breath, right? If I'm sitting with you at a dinner table, right, am I breathing and am I focusing on how you feel, or am I texting and looking down and not making eye contact? Because as soon as you shift into, okay, here's my breath and I'm here with another human being, I can connect energetically, then you can immediately connect and be present. Yeah. And a lot of people don't do that. The third part is, listen, if all else fails and you have these ruminating thoughts and this overthinking, you can just simply try this technique. There's two of them. One is think about the back of your brain, right back here. Just think about it. Think about this moving blood to it. And as you think about the back of your brain and moving blood to it, you really can't think about anything else.
What do you find as far as results oriented from being present? What are the benefits of being present?
There are so many benefits of cultivating your presence, and also known as mindfulness. One is, you have far better relationships. People feel heard and seen. And 100% people feel heard and seen. You almost get a superpower. When you're present with someone, you can make eye contact, listen, and be calm, and they know that you're not thinking about anything else. You're focused on them. It's your superpower, both in your relationships, but if you're dating, if you're single and you're going on dates, that's the first thing I recommend. Just cultivate some presence and some mindfulness. It will be noticed. The second thing is you become far less anxious. You become far less anxious if because oftentimes in this moment, unless there's like something that you need to take care of that's immediate and emergency, in this moment, right? It's always just this moment. Yeah. You don't have to worry about the future, anxiety, or fear of the past, or depression.
It's like the other concept that I know you talk a lot about is about caring less. And I feel that's like, it seems like a paradox, right? It's like, who's this person that's so selfish and, doesn't really care about much. But what really happens when you care less, and how can we care less?
Yeah. So I feed these statements, especially on social media, because it will get someone's attention and maybe open them up a little bit, even if it's like they want to argue about caring less. And I get a lot of DMs like, "What do you mean care less? We have to have passion in our lives." And so there are two things. It's a Buddhist principle of non-attachment. Meaning I can put out into the world, I can put a desire out in the world, but as soon as I need it, want it, it becomes in a state of samsara and I am suffering. So there is a space between, like what I want and then having it. And in that space, there's suffering. But in that space, if you declare, and this is more of spirituality, where you declare like, this is what I really want in my life. But if I don't I don't need it, meaning like I can proclaim this, I can announce it, I can manifest it, and then I can let it go and let it develop how it should be. Doesn't mean I'm not going to take steps. It just means if it doesn't work out, if you don't get that deal, if the date doesn't work out, if, like you don't get the job you really want, it's a confidence knowing that it's going to work out regardless. And I don't need to try to pick up water with two fists, squeezing so tight that I, crack if I don't get it. Instead, you just gently cup your hands, pick up the water, and allow more to flow to you.
I know that many of the things that I would put intention and emotion, and I guess it would actually turn out to be suffering in a way, many of those things never worked out. And then the things that I thought were the worst things that ever happened to me looking back now, on all levels, first of all, those are the things that ended up happening, and they end up being the best things to ever happen to me. So I think that, in our little brain, I always think about it like the ego, in our little mind, like who are we to say this is good and this is bad? How would we know that the world existed, thousands of years and people, millions and billions of people? If you think about it that way, how do we know what's good for us or what's not?
Our galaxy, our Earth, our rock is in an infinite amount of galaxies. The energy around us, we can see 0.5% of it. Who are we to judge what's good or bad? There is definitely a higher something, right? Have you heard the story about the horse farmer?
Sure, please.
All right, very quickly. Horse farmer loses three horses. His neighbor comes over. He says, "Oh my God, what? I'm so sorry for your loss. What bad news?" And he's like, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" And so the horses come back the next day with three more horses. The studs have attracted some foals and bring back. Now he's doubled the amount of horses he has. And the neighbor comes, "What good news? You have doubled your horses." And he says, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" And so while the son, his only son that helps with the farm, is helping to tame these horses and breaks a leg, neighbor comes, "Good news, bad news." And, like, "I'm so sorry about that." And he says, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" Meanwhile, the region that they're in goes to war, and the son cannot go and fight, and most of the men are dying. The son can't go and fight because of his broken leg, and the neighbor comes, "Oh, what fortune that you have." And he says, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" Meaning, like, we put judgment on the things that happen into our lives, where really they're just things that happen in our lives.
I think that every suffering within ourselves, it's all a form of judgment of self, or judgment of others. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
But I always figure at the things that I see. Anytime I'll see something negative in some third party, it's always some work that I need to do on myself. It always,
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point.
right? I mean, when you journey, you'll understand it. Where your stomach gets tight and you feel like upset or emotional about something, it's always a reflection of some work you need to do within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The whole concept of everyone is a mirror of who we are. Right. So when you're all upset about someone and their poor behavior, it's like it's an opportunity and a kind of a red flag to start looking at yourself. Where in your life is that in you? That's a great point to make. I love that one.
And
Yeah.
I know you talk a lot about also listening and the importance of listening. Why, first of all, how do we become a better listener?
Not many people listen because they think two things. One, they're afraid of silence. Right? There's often people, if there's no conversation, then something is wrong, right? If people aren't talking, if there's silence, if you're at a dinner or something and there's a few beats of silence, or you're driving in a car and there's some silence, or someone's reading in the house and there's some silence, a lot of people get very uncomfortable with that. So you have to say why. And it's like, okay, because if there's silence, um, I put on this idea that there's something wrong. I'm doing something wrong, and then there's an awkwardness, right? And so the art of listening is almost just having the confidence to be quiet for a second and allow the person to speak. And then the second part is to be present enough to listen, like without having to think about your own thoughts and how you're going to respond, because that's ego. When you start to think about your thoughts and how you're going to respond, you're thinking about how you're going to be reflected in this person's eyes. Am I smart enough? Did I say something witty enough? And like, conversation's great, and you want to be witty, you want to do all these things, but allowing someone to be heard means not thinking about yourself and what you're going to say, allowing the space for them to speak, which is confidence, and then just really having some curiosity, being, actually interested in someone, finding something. You can be interested in anyone. Curiosity about someone. We are so dynamic. We have so many things going on. Like you talked about the programming from childhood, taking responsibility and just saying that programming is no longer me. And that's why I love hypnosis. I practice, I'm a master hypnotist because I get into that programming and change it. But like this, people are so interesting that you can always ask a question and then listen and be curious.
So first of all, hypnosis always fascinated me. Does that actually work for the long term?
Yeah, miraculous results. Miraculous results. Everything is like a neural pathway, right? So when you're, like you said, you got it exactly right. We were programmed from 0 to 7 years old, and now that programming is in it's in our operating system, our autonomic nervous system. It has neural pathways. And through neurogenesis, we create new neural pathways, all the things, right? We know this, neuroplasticity. And so through hypnosis, you can start a new neural pathway, a new belief, a new something. And some get stronger than others, but you have to practice those for them to keep. But you could keep. Like if I could, like I could convince you that smoking, you didn't want to ever smoke again, and you wouldn't smoke again. You probably wouldn't have to practice at that. But when it becomes something that is more insidious, like your own self-worth and lack of it, then you kind of have to get in there a few times.
Well, I think we are a product of deep belief systems, right? That we take action and then results happen because of at different points of our existence. Maybe it could be genetic somewhat, but different experiences that we've had and that shape our belief systems. Because I know I have a lot of friends, whether they'll do ayahuasca or ketamine, different things. And I always tell them, I say, look, I would, again, if you're going in with a clean heart and a good intention, I want to heal. I want to do better. And you feel intuitively that this is a comfortable space because unfortunately, a lot of us have addictive personalities. And the problem is, I had a friend who every weekend he was doing ayahuasca, right? So it was like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's, it is what I don't judge, but it's interesting that I didn't really think so much about hypnosis, that if the result gets better and your general sense of well-being exists, that's probably, we should talk a lot more about that in society.
Yeah, that's what I do a lot of with groups of people. And by the way, you don't need, our brain, our pineal gland creates melatonin, creates DMT, creates all the psychedelic drugs that we want. Like you don't need ayahuasca, DMT, bufo, psilocybin. Although I've done it all, it's wonderful, it's beautiful. You don't need it. Through hypnosis, you can have incredible mystical experiences. You can be connected to the quantum itself through just traveling through your subconscious mind. It takes a little bit more work. So someone who's going every weekend to do ayahuasca, I'm just wondering if they're bypassing the work, right? They have to take more medicine to get there because they don't want to actually sit and say, what do I need to do in my life so that I can live in this realm and still access my spirituality at any time? And so that's what I would ask in that question. I'd be curious about what is it that's coming up for you. But yeah, hypnosis, you can do not only the very practical operating system, belief system type of stuff, but you can 100% travel through space and time and space to a totally different dimension.
It's amazing, and reshift. Because, right, in the end, we have all the tools within ourselves. If we're going to use an alternative substance, right, to stimulate that, then that's what we need the whole time. But the better, maybe, like logically, I think maybe the better way would be if we can tap into it ourselves, right?
Yeah. I mean, transcendental meditation, monks, all those guys, they don't ever need one drug. And I'm not saying that we're going to sit for 30 years, 16 hours a year, like a day, trying
Mm.
to get there. But they don't, they're there. They're having ayahuasca experiences. They're talking to mother. They're doing the whole thing, right? And they've cultivated that practice. So we have the ability that those medicines speed up the connection. But we have to be cultivating that practice every single day so that we don't have to go and do it every time.
Mm. I know, I know also, because this is a practice and that I do for many years, but initially I thought it was very strange, but positive self-talk.
Mm.
Because you're looking at it, you're like, wow, this guy's a little bit ridiculous. He talks to himself, right? I mean, but for me, they say, talk in the mirror, talk to yourself. Why, first of all, why shouldn't there be a stigma to that? And then why is it so important?
Talking out loud to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. People think I'm crazy, and it's like I have a disability too. I walk with a limp. I had a tumor on my spinal cord, and that's kind of this really long story about illness, right? But now I walk with a limp, and it's painful. And so I'll be walking down the street to New York City, and there's a lot of people on the street, right? And so if I trip, if I have a lot of pain, I'll start like I hear myself like saying like, "God damn this body," like, "Oh, man." Like shaming my body, and I'll stop and yell on the street. No, you're doing good, buddy.
Mm.
Literally, I'll counteract that negative comment with a positive one out loud on the street, and people have turned around and just looked at me like I was insane.
Mm.
But our body is listening, right? And like we're saying so many negative things quietly in our mind that we need to sometimes counteract them with positive ones that we say loudly. Um, Not to mention we have this other voice, right? This other, I guess, hearing, which is the voice that hears everything, both good and bad, that you say. This is the thing above that watches everything that we do. And then, who and what is that?
I tell you, you know, I don't know. I've said it a couple times in the show, but how many times up to the age of 18 have we heard the word no or can't do it or don't do it or fear-based from, right, people we know and we trust, not because it's their fault. So that's probably a lot of our programming. So I think of, just from a practical perspective, why that positive self-talk, you put it like a T-chart and it's like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And each day by day by day, it's exhausting. Your mind is telling you you're crazy. But that's why, for me, it's super, super, super important.
Yeah, that's a great practical explanation of it. Like you're literally reprogramming your mind by those commands.
And I know you also had a TED talk, and you mentioned before lesions on your spine and you walk with a limp. When I see you now, and I think about this because people have to know that things are possible, right? That it's not, going here, doing this, what society says is gonna, when I'm by myself, is gonna generally make me feel good, right? It's daily practices. I'm sure, you even talked about, you were really, really in a really bad space, from a mental health perspective.
Yeah.
So what was it? What was that like moment where you decided that you're going to make a change, a daily, it's discipline, a change of what exists to something else, to who you are today?
Yeah, I believe for me, it's always been small changes and they've been cumulative. So, like, you get to a place where you're feeling so sick, so in pain, so lonely, so like separate from everyone else, that you're just like, what am I going to do here? Am I going to walk out in traffic or am I going to like find some help? And I think the first thing that I did perhaps was this transformational course 20 years ago called the Landmark Forum.
Mm.
And I stepped out and I was like, you know what? I've heard a lot about this. Some people say it's a cult. Who knows what it is? But I need to do something different from the matrix that I'm in. And so I stepped out and I did that. And that was probably the first thing that I did, and it really um, started to change things. The other thing, I made a decision that anytime someone was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, how are you feeling?" That kind of thing, I would tell them instead of bypassing, because I would make up lies. I'd say I got in a motorcycle accident, whatever it was. I'd make up a lie because I was shameful of my illness. And so I decided I'd tell them, and then of course, I got a guy that you need to see. Have you talked to, my friend went to someone. And so I just said, anybody who gives me a guy, I'm going to go see them. And so I went to see 200 different healers, all over the world, everywhere, from Ecuador to Switzerland to all of the United States. And I saw everyone's guys. And some of them were wonderful and some of them weren't. But everything that I learned was a cumulative basis where I had tools now that if I was to get depressed or, whatever it was, I'd just snap out of it. But really, the neural pathways for mindfulness and gratitude were just strengthened.
I think that, right, there has to be this moment, but inside of you, I think that's like attracts alike, and you just find seekers, right? You're seeking something better, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people just are okay with what it is, but and I think that seeking will go on your entire life, but you get better as time goes on, just by the process of seeking, looking for different things, and you become more and more okay, right? That's the sense, right?
Yeah. I love the way you say that. You become more and more okay. I would agree with that. Right. And I still had some blocks. My blocks were like, I was settling for my physical body, right? I wasn't, I was in well, we won't even get there, but our medical system is so broken. I know your wife went to IIN, and
Yeah.
I had led that business for quite some time, and we could talk about that. But our medical system, our healthcare system in the United States is so broken that anybody with a chronic condition gets so beaten down that they have to be superhuman to break out of that and still get healthy. But that's how I was. So I became complacent about my body. I was like, okay, I'll walk with this pain, I'll walk with this limp. It may be getting better, but I'll focus elsewhere. And so there's always another layer of the onion to peel. And I had to really say, okay, how am I going to focus on my body in a way, that doesn't get complacent, because that's the hard thing to do right now.
I'll tell you what's wild. I'm married almost 20 years, and I want to talk about your perspective on relationships and dating, because this world is crazy. They were saying a stat that by 2030, 50% of women, this was a crazy stat I saw the other day, will never get married. And I think, you talk about like loneliness and stuff. Like, what can people do? Just like, again, a practical advice. What can people do to be able to find the right mate?
Find the right mate. And I talk about this a lot, but again, it's like sneaking in the vegetables again, because right, you're never going to find if you, like you said before, everybody's a mirror for us, right? We're never going to find the right mate if we're mirroring everything we don't want. So love, I believe, is really just self-love, right? If you hate yourself, you're going to be alone or with toxic people. And so, and is it possible? By the way, is it possible to stay single your entire life with like some lovers here and there and a great family and some wonderful friends and a dog? Yes. Yes. And is it okay? I think so. Like, why is it not okay? What's the shame around that? But okay, so say you want a mate and like you're going to go out and you want like this significant other that you make a commitment to, and you live in the same house and have some children, that kind of thing. So how do you start attracting that person? And the first thing is to really understand how you feel about yourself, because you will magnetize and radiate energy based on how much you love yourself.
Hmm.
The second part is, if you have some of those programmings, like, you're, avoidant or anxious in your attachments because, someone gets close to you and you sabotage it because you're avoidant, or, someone doesn't call you for a day and you send them 150 text messages wondering if they've died and why they don't love you anymore. Those are things that you need to resolve. So it's never, there's a lot of folks out there in the dating and relationship world that will give you like these practical tips to attract someone. That's just positive psychology. Go take a positive psychology course. You'll understand what confirmation bias and all the things are. But if you really want a holistic approach, one, get some hypnosis, try to change some beliefs in your mind, and two, work on yourself inwardly, because when you work inwardly, you reflect so much brighter outwardly, and you'll notice people coming to you.
I
Not
was
everybody does that work. Yeah.
I was just thinking like, and this came to me a little bit ago. The reason the a great way to at least begin on the path of internal joy, and not just connecting with a mate, but true friends, is you put your true self, your authentic self out there. Now, what happens on that journey, right? A lot of people shed and it's lonely, but the reward at the end of that, imagine being around just great people that are in your same vibration, same space, right? Like, that's a great reward. You don't have to fake you're relaxed. You can just be yourself. Like, how great is
Yeah.
that? That's like
Yeah.
an amazing place.
Right. And I guess, what do you need to be able to do that? You need to be authentic and just be yourself. You need to release all the fear
Mm.
that they're not going to like me, and be okay. You're not for everyone. I'm not for everyone.
Right,
That's okay.
right.
Right. But we
You
want to
have
be
to be
loved.
okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you just wrote a book, The Stimulati Experience. Tell us about the main idea, the main theme that really sticks out for you.
Yeah. I wrote that book in 2018. And sometimes you change so much that I don't even remember the person who wrote that book, but in a good way. And so what I wrote about at that time was all of my greatest teachers, because I had been around the world at that time for 10 years, seeing every healer there was to try to figure out what was wrong with me. And really what I figured out was, there was nothing wrong with me, that I just needed, more, perception. I needed to open my perception. But my healers then they were Ecuadorian shaman, they were grandmasters of kung fu. I had a girlfriend that we dated for 5 years that it was absolute mayhem. That was one of my best teachers.
Mm.
And so I wrote a book about all of that. And it gave some practical tips and tools so that you can start to break free from what I call this cage of perception that we're in. Just like we're in a lead box that is our perception. And then, like, when you drill a little hole and some light comes in, you're like, oh my God, there's so much outside this box.
And I know that which is like super exciting. I think about this a lot. I imagine, again, like-minded people coming together. You're creating a community. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have led groups of people, and we all kind of have the same thing in common. So all the groups of people that I lead, we kind of have all the same things in common. One, a desire for something more, an awareness to look beneath the fold, some curiosity. There is a little bit of like stuckness there. There's some sadness and some pain. Maybe there was a breakup or a divorce, or, looking for a relationship. But it's people who are willing to do the work. And these courses have been amazing, but they're small groups where people get together and they meet all over the world now, and created like a sisterhood and a brotherhood, but they're expensive. And so there's been a lot of people that felt as though they were missing out on that experience. So I've put together this very inexpensive community where people can come and do my courses and listen to my recordings and chat with each other and come to live events and online events and all that. And it's very inexpensive. So I'm launching that soon.
That's really, really amazing. Right, because there's many tools out there, but it costs. So that's a great, great tool, great tools, especially someone, I think about it, what it took to go to 200 different healers. It's just amazing, right? That
Hundreds of
journey,
thousands of dollars. Yes.
right?
Yes. It's expensive. Wellness isn't cheap, but also sickness is more expensive. So I'll pay for wellness as opposed to like trying to fight with insurance around illness any day.
Agreed. And what's something that you're grateful for?
Right now,
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for two things right now. My dog. I love this damn dog. Every day that I see him he makes me happy. And two, I'm really grateful. My niece just got married in Jackson Hole to a wonderful guy. And I just got to see my entire family, in one of the most beautiful places in the United States, I think. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, it's magical. Jackson Hole is magical. People don't realize in Teton, 97% is owned by the federal government, so nobody can touch it. So it's really, really going out skiing. I mean, even in the summertime, it's beautiful.
In the summertime, I love it. We'll literally walk down the street. We saw bear, moose, elk. It's like, and so you see people on the side of the road, like 3 feet away, taking pictures, like it's Disneyland. Like these are live wild animals that are ready to charge. But it is, yeah, you're absolutely right. I like that word, magical. It is.
And it's great connecting back with family. You give a little space, you do some work, and the perception when you come back around, it's always really nice.
Yeah.
What would you say is the common denominator for living in abundance?
Releasing fear. Right. So I think here's the negative side of it. We as humans have a common denominator of fear. Fear that we don't have enough, that we're not good enough, that something's going to go wrong, that we're going to lose something, all this fear, right? They're not going to like us. We can't be ourselves. What if we lose our job? Every day we're cycling through fear. So the common denominator to live in abundance is not necessarily to go get something more. We have it already. It's all around us. It's to release what's blocking us from it. And usually that block is fear. So that's the common denominator for all of us. If you want to step into abundance, learn to release your cords of fear.
I think the greatest fear person should have is of fear itself, right? That's what they say.
Yep.
Well, I want to just tell you, Jim, this has really been eye-opening and really great, and thank you so much. How could people learn more about you or work with you and follow you on social?
Yeah, on social, I'm Jim Curtis 1 on Instagram and Jim Curtis 8 on TikTok. And then my books and courses, are just a Google search away by Jim Curtis. So, but I usually am pretty active on social, so I can see people there.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's really been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a fun conversation. It's a great one.
Likewise. Before we say goodbye, just a quick ask. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we'd be grateful for a like, share, and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, feel free to leave a rating and review. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.